Lawrence, a professor of political science at the American University, specializing in North Africa. Professor Lawrence is joining us from Washington. Professor Lawrence, it's good to speak with you again, sir. So just first up, what's your assessment of what's currently happening in Tunisia?
Well, in addition to the sacking of all the ministers, my reports are telling me that he's sacking elected mayors and governors. He's blocked 64 parliamentarians from leaving the country and says he has charges he's filing against all of them and is going to lead the prosecution. None of this is envisaged in the Constitution. We've had some interesting statements by various political entities. The large labor union, which has been sort of the custodian of the revolution and democracy in many ways, said that the president's moves were in conformity with the Constitution, but without laying out any details, and also calling for a return to normal political functioning. But the way in which the Constitution's written is that this is supposed to be done if there's a threat to the government. And right now, the only threat to the government is the president. He's the one that shut it down.
I mean, Professor Lawrence, from what you're describing there, that sounds like a coup. Are you happy to use the C words to describe what's taking place?
Well, I think it all depends on the military, as I've said before on TRT. If the military goes with him full bore, and there have been some indications that that is going on, including the actions around the Tunisian parliament and some of the arbitrary arrests going on, the closing of the Jazeera a TV station and other things, that then we have a coup. If, however, we just have a political crisis that will emerge from it in 30 days or less or a little bit more, if the political parties begin to be listened to, then, of course, we'll have a situation like 2013 where a solution is possible. The parliament has been meeting by video conference, the closed parliament, which is interesting because officially it's still in session but can't meet. But, of course, with video technology, it can meet. So it'll be interesting to see what the parties come up with, but most of the parties are against what the president is doing, even though everyone is sympathetic with what the streets' complaints are in terms of the economy and healthcare. But the president, so for example, the president, by turning over healthcare to the military, which will not be able to solve the health problems, is just setting up the government for more failure.
Absolutely. And I do wonder, as we wait to see what does happen in the next 30 days, that's a 30-day period that's been set by the president currently to try and, I guess, assess what his next moves are going to be. What do you think this tells us about the legacy of the Arab Spring, which, of course, began in Tunisia?
Well, first of all, it doesn't have to go a full 30 days. It could be less. And the Constitution says get back to regular government functioning as soon as possible. But in terms of the Arab Spring legacy, Tunisia had, of course, the only positive outcome out of the Arab Spring. But in many ways, Tunisia had two revolutions. It had a political one to get rid of the former dictator, and it had a socioeconomic revolution whose aims has never really been met. So in many ways, this is just a continuation of the revolution. And in some ways, this populist president, by sacking everyone he can get his hands on, is an extension of that revolution, which rejects the whole political class. The problem is he's the president, and his job isn't only to sanction the government, it's actually to get the government working. So whether or not this president begins to show some leadership remains to be seen.
It's fascinating that you've articulated just how complex and intense a situation is happening right now in Tunisia, Professor. And I do wonder, what do you think will be the response of the international community? Obviously, this just happened in the past 24 hours. Do you think it's going to be a wait and see from many nations before they start condemning a lot of what's taking place?
Yeah, it's unclear to them exactly what to condemn yet. So emblematic of the international reactions is the German statement, which said, this isn't a coup, but we need to get back to constitutional order. Well, if it isn't a coup, what are we getting back to? From what? They don't really name the devil there. The Americans, of course, are working on their statements with the situation evolving on the ground, but I'm sure the Americans, like the French, will prefer to use the back channel more than public statements to try to get things back on track. The face-saving device which will be offered to the president will be, okay, we understand you did this for COVID. France and the U.S. are flooding Tunisia with vaccines, and France is giving them oxygen because they keep running out of oxygen in the hospitals. But the oxygen itself isn't enough. The COVID response isn't enough. There needs to be some political pressure brought to bear on Kais Saied to take the face-saving way out and declare that, yes, he did it to get COVID under control, and now we're going to get back to constitutional order. But so far, so bad. And this positive reaction in some Tunisian cities, particularly if you look at the crowds among older Tunisians who never liked the Ennahda party, that may put some wind behind the sails of Kais Saied and push him in the direction of a more Napoleon Bonapartist approach to this revolution, where he takes over all authority and tries to achieve its aims on his own. But I don't think he can do it.
No, perhaps not. Plenty more to come on this story. We do appreciate your analysis, Professor William Lawrence. Thanks for being with us.